I'm Gwyneth Paltrow, and you're listening to the Goop podcast. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time, here's what you can expect. Every Thursday, and a bunch of Tuesdays coming up, Goop editors will be sitting down with thought leaders who are pushing boundaries in their fields. We'll talk to doctors, creatives, CEOs, and relationship experts. You'll hear me interviewing some of the people I admire most in this world, and you'll also hear a lot from my Chief Content Officer at Goop, Elise Lunin. I love listening to Elise's interviews because she asks the smartest questions and really just listens. Today's guest is the very magnetic Nicole Daedone. She's a longtime proponent and teacher of a practice called orgasmic meditation, which has been called the yoga of sex. It's probably not what you think. Nicole is also the author of Slow Sex, which is a book I often recommend to women who are looking for more desire in their relationships.
To me, climax is like sugar. Like it hijacks your hunger for the real thing that you're looking for. And I think we're looking for this deeper state. And so we only have this one thing, so we just keep pressing the climax lever. We just keep pressing it. But there's this entirely different world.
Nicole sat down with our Chief Content Officer, Elise Lunin, to talk about barriers to intimacy and orgasm and what we can do to strengthen our own sexuality. But before we get to Nicole, let's talk about one of our partners.
Dropbox was one of the first platforms that we started using at Goop. We've outgrown a lot of the technologies that we used in the early days of the company, but Dropbox is one that's really stuck. If you haven't used Dropbox for work, it's essentially an online home for everything your team is working on. It's a platform that lets you organize the conversations your team is having about different projects, and it comes with an entire set of tools that helps you cut out all the annoying little distractions and inconvenient logistics that end up being a big time and energy drain. It's not so much about productivity or working harder or faster. It's about making really collaborative, cross-functional work simpler. When everyone on the team can stay in sync, the experience of working together gets a whole lot better. And in my experience, when teams are in the flow of things, individuals are able to do their best, most creative work. To look into Dropbox for your workplace, visit dropbox.com/flow.
Now let's get to Elise and Nicole Daedone.
So Nicole, let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
How did you get into orgasmic meditation? And can you define it? I think we should.
It's so funny that my life begins with that moment. But so I can define it. What it is it's basically an attention training practice in the arena of sexuality, which we haven't had. So there are two times when attention is really strong. One is in sexually charged arenas, and the other is when we're in life or death situations. So you can bootstrap the attention and develop this whole other state of consciousness. That's like the big definition. The really refined one is you're stroking the upper left-hand quadrant of a woman's clitoris, the 1 o'clock position. And as you grow to master it, you stroke it no more firmly than you stroke an eyelid. So that spot where most women are saying, ooh, a little to the left, a little to the right, they're aiming for this spot. It's a bundle of 8,000 nerve endings. As you stroke it, it begins to open. Over a period of years, it opens fully across the whole of the clitoris and across the whole of the vaginal area. So we're usually trying to push really hard to get some sensation rather than opening up the body to receive it. So that's what we're doing.
So it's actually a physiological shift.
It's physiological. We just finished the first partnered stimulation research since Masters and Johnson. So all of our definition of sexuality has been from the 50s. Which can tell you something. And so one of the things that they found is there's an actual orgasmic state. There's a state of consciousness that you hit that is different from climax, and that actually you have higher learning capacities, you have lower depression, there's a whole set of things that occur.
Can you achieve that state through other means outside of masturbation?
It's not masturbation. Oh, it's a partnered practice, which is really, really important because you can't take yourself out of control. That's one reason that I think it's important. I think another reason that it's really important is if, as a woman, the number one question I get is, isn't there some way I can do this without a partner? Mm-hmm. But as a woman, if I actually can train my partner to be facile with my nervous system in a way that I can't, because I can't tickle myself, I can't give myself a good deep massage, and you actually can't bring yourself to this state of consciousness alone, then it radically shifts relationships, between women and women and men, whoever's stroking.
And is the idea that this is like you sustain it, or is it just like you touch it? Like you achieve it?
Beautiful. So what happened for me, you asked, what happened for me was I had this. In my first experience, I had this experience and something, I wanted to be a Buddhist nun, you mentioned that. And I was accustomed to, you can sit, and when you sit, all of your inner narrative goes away, that mm-hmm. kind of chatter that's judging everything all the time that makes you so exhausted. It begins to drop away. And then all of a sudden there's this feeling of, freedom. Well, I felt that in this practice. But I felt it in a way that it locked on. It was so clear. Everything was silent. All of my normal woman stuff of, I shouldn't have eaten that, or, I wonder if he thinks I look pretty right now, or are we going to get married, or all of that stuff that's usually in my head, gone. There was nothing. It was just, everything was open and clear and quiet. It wasn't the big, dramatic, hip thrusting, mm-hmm. high heel thing. It was just everything was open and clear. And I thought, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what everyone's looking for in porn shops or in all of these places, and sexy dancing. And this state of consciousness is what's available. And then over a period of years, just like with Buddhist meditation or in yoga, when you first go to yoga, it's really hard. I've been doing yoga for 20 years. It's really hard. And then all of a sudden it comes to be the easiest place for you to be. You look forward to it because you have freedom. That's what the practice is like.
So when you first experienced this, obviously you were partnered. Was it like mixed up with love, or is this really just sort of a practice that is distinct from the person who is doing it for you?
That's a really good question. Well, we just finished the science. I'm so grateful that I have the science now, because I've been having these questions over the years. And here's what's interesting is they tried long-term partners, and they had people who had just met, different practitioners. And it doesn't matter. Here's what's super interesting. Both the person who's stroking and the person who's being stroked, at 6 minutes, begin to sync up brain waves and have the same experience.
So you can feel it, a man can feel it in his body?
Yes.
Wow.
Both are having, so see, that radically changes our idea around sexuality or the erotic, and this idea that it's commerce-based. Oh, I stroke you, now you do something for me. We have a shared experience, and there's a set of reasons. The protocols are the primary reason. But so we have this shared experience at 6 minutes. And then both people begin to open into this state of consciousness. And
where is that physically located on a man? You mentioned guys doing it for guys, or is there an equivalent of? Not really?
Not so much. The most sensitive spot on the human body, man or woman, is the clitoris. Well, obviously the clitoris is only on a woman's body, but that is where the most nerve endings are located.
Finally, an advantage. Right? I know. This is clearly advanced, or maybe not. Maybe it's the simplest practice of them all. But I feel like for so many women who we hear from, orgasm is out of reach or just not something that they can typically achieve. Why do you think it's important to bridge the gap?
I'm so happy you asked that question, because I think that both sexuality and sexual practices have been defined to date by men. Mm-hmm. So our idea of what orgasm is supposed to look like we don't have an orgasmic state that includes the whole of the body, which is really what happens in a woman's body. So there's this funny joke: a fish can't climb a tree, and you can't judge it by the fact that it can't climb a tree. A woman's body goes into an orgasm state differently. So what we're trying to do is have this idea of some big splurting, like female ejaculation, where we are trying to have this idea of what it's supposed to be like, and our bodies don't do that. Not only do our bodies not do that, but they don't do that from the way it's being done to us. So the fact that you need tremendous focus on a woman's body, and the fact that it's a tiny, tiny spot that you're looking for, and this big thing doesn't always work. And so we have it written incorrectly. There's a way that, that's part of what I want to do. I think, Hugh Hefner wrote a lot of how we look at sexuality in our culture, and I want to do it from a woman's perspective. What actually happens in a woman's body? I think masculine sexuality is a subset of that. So it's not like that's not beautiful and fun and great, but there is something deeper that's available for both of us.
Have you ever had anyone work at one of your clinics or be at the land or undertake this exploration who has been unable to do it?
No, never. Isn't that amazing? And not only that, but I've worked with transsexual people who have had surgeries, and we've found a way. And it's been an amazing experience. And the primary reason is that the real practice is focusing your attention on the most sensational part of the body. It's really more about your capacity to focus. See, we look at sexuality as like this thing that's, you can kind of discard it and it doesn't really matter, but it actually runs pretty much everything we do. We dress for it, we work for it, everything we do circulates around it, but we don't practice consciousness around it. And I think that's actually what we're headed into. We had yoga, we had meditation, and now orgasm is going to be the thing that fuels us. This deeply feminine world is going to be what fuels us.
I know you said that it's like sex is something we discard, or it's sort of there's a commercial relationship around it. I think there's a tremendous amount of shame and embarrassment, primarily for women who feel uncomfortable about like having pleasure, having attention.
Right.
Like, how do you crack that?
Here's the good news. I don't think we have to. People are starving for a different way. Yoga was so weird when I was growing up. My family did yoga, and it was everyone thought we were the freaky family in the 70s. And now it's just integrated because I think we need it. And I think the time of surviving on deprivation and a green juice and 4 almonds just isn't doing it anymore. I think there's a way we need to nourish, especially as women. We need to nourish in our way. We need to, the masculine path is about, production and getting things done, but the feminine path is really about this nourishing of the body, not indulgence, but nourishing. And I think it's as women are rising in power, this will rise as well. The understanding of how important it is.
So in your dream scenario, just to give a little bit of structure to to what this looks like in a let's just say a typical male female couple. This is something that you do on the regular. Is it like the preamble? Is it in terms of sex? Like, do you do this instead of sex? Do you do this in addition to sex? Is sex irrelevant?
Sex is very relevant, but not with respect to this. And it's definitely not foreplay. It's its own practice. In the same way you would do yoga or you would do meditation, and you would do that to take care of yourself and to nourish your body and to nourish your relationship and nourish your capacity for true intimacy, not the romantic ideal of intimacy, but the capacity to feel each other. You would do it in that way. And when I have couples come to me, usually I have them do it for 30 days straight, just to begin to tune in that way and actually be able to sense each other. And then often they pick the practice up and just take it for themselves. Yeah.
Where does one learn how to do this? Like, do you need a a master? Do you need an instructor? Do you go to a special place?
So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I wanted it to be totally accessible at whatever level of comfort you had. So you can go online, and the organization that I founded, that I'm no longer with, but support, you can go online and look up orgasmic meditation, and there's videos how to do it. Or you can call, and I think there are now 1,500 coaches, and you can talk to a coach, or you can Skype with a coach, or there are annexes in 36 different cities, and you can take a course. You can go with your partner, then you go to your room and you have your experience, and you can come back and talk about it. Any questions you had or difficulties. So there's a whole array of ways to begin to cross the. There are people, I used to know everyone in the world who owned at a certain point, and now there are people who say, I read your book and I learned how to do it with my partner, and I've been doing it for years.
And does it, living in this sort of awakened orgasmic space, or like that sort of flowering that you talked about of the nerves opening, like what does that mean for the rest of your day?
Well, so I work with a lot of women who are tired and wired, and a lot of women who, it's almost like, I don't know, their minds are dry tinder. It's kind of like they're running on fumes in a certain way, and they've never actually even had the experience of living from full. And the world looks so radically different. It goes from production and work to creativity. You step into a totally different place because your body is nourished. It just has the basic nourishment. In the same way, it's wise to eat when you go to work. It's wise to make sure that your parasympathetic nervous system is taken care of, and that hyper arousal state that we're in, and the negativity bias that's in our mind, that's handled. You can handle that in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. Your body can be nourished in such a way that you're in a deep, deep state of relaxation. One of the things that they found in this study is that it's more effective than mindfulness for bringing the mind down from hyperarousal, so any kind of trauma or PTSD, to curbing depression. The 5 precursors to mental illness all go down radically when you have this practice, and that's in 20 minutes.
So that's what you devote, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And at minute 6, you and your partner are in some sort of new space together.
You sync up. And most of us know this place. There's a way that it can sound so woo, trippy, and I work really hard. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the science, is so that everything was grounded. But we've all been in a movie theater where you feel connected together, where everyone goes at the same time, or in a yoga studio where everyone in class kind of syncs up. 1/3 of our brain, the limbic brain, is dedicated to feeling into the feeling states of other human beings. This practice is just so focused that you can tap into that.
So it's like applied empathy.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Like extreme empathy.
Exactly. And for me, in a much bigger picture, one of the reasons I wanted to be a Buddhist nun was I had glimpsed what the world would be like if we all felt our connection. We all know we're connected, but if you don't feel it, it's easy to forget it. But once you feel it, you can't forget that. And so that when I had this practice and I felt the connection, I thought we could all have that. This could be a route to that.
And does this change, like once you have a fully developed practice, does it change the way that you experience more typical sex?
Changes the way you experience everything. So I didn't have I'm a crazy practitioner. So I didn't have intercourse for 18 months. I just did the practice. I wanted to learn it inside and out, and so I did. And the experience of having sex after that, it was different by orders of magnitude. Mark Twain says the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. It's like, that's what it was like. Because I was accustomed, I was tight. I was a tight woman, and everything down there was tight. It was tight, 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 tight. And so you kind of had to go very hard And suddenly to have everything be just full and saturated, that barely anything needed to happen in order to get these really dramatic results in my body.
And do you think that that's why sort of the spectrum of women and orgasm is so vast? Why some women seem able to like just turn it on so quickly while others find it inaccessible, just because that attunement is so important and so specific and easily sort of, like as you said, tight, like wired and tired, all those things, that's why so many women find it so difficult, whereas others don't? Or is it all a lie?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think one is I actually think the woman who gets turned on in some ways is in more danger, and I'll tell you why. So there's the woman who's tight, and there's no way the body cannot go into an orgasmic state and have the vigilance center up at the same time. So that hyper aroused state that we can get into, that stress state, it actually it prevents any kind of orgasmic state. It prevents any kind of relaxation. It prevents the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's that. And then there are those women, I know this is me. So as a woman, I was trained to turn on when I wanted a relationship. And then I had a driver. I had something that had it be that it was worth turning on, or, drink a glass of wine or whatever it is. And then that would override any of my vigilance center. And so, but that's why I think you also see decreasing sexuality, diminishing returns in relationship. We know how to turn it on when we want that thing, but we don't know how to do it for our own nourishment and pleasure. And that's the part I want to shift. I want it to be really clear that this is an integral part of your wellness program. In the same way, I date, and I'll date these guys, and I'll say, I've just come from yoga. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I should do yoga. All of us know we should do yoga. We all know that there's some way or something of that nature, something meditative. We know that we'll feel better if we do it. I believe that this needs to be cast in that light as opposed to any kind of indulgence or something seedy, or, I wanted it to be a clean, well-lighted place to explore and open this aspect of wellness.
Seems like a reality show, The Dating Life with Nicole Daedone. Do people know, like, are you dating people from like the orgasmic meditation community, or do these gentlemen have no idea?
Sometimes they do. It's funny. I'm super transparent about what I do, and I date even on online. I'll say, when you see what I do, you'll either run for the hills or you'll fall in love, and it's a lot to have, for sure.
It must be so intimidating.
It can be, or to the right guy, it's a relief. I don't know. I'll just tell you my entire life story here. But for also, younger guys are dating older women more often. There's a great book called The Richer Sex, and she was saying now that we're 51% management, things are going to change. We'll be dating younger guys. There'll be a whole set of things. But so I often say, why are you interested in an older woman? And they'll say, she knows what she wants. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a part that women have no idea about, how deeply, deeply men want to know what we want. They'll say, no, he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. You don't understand. And I'll turn to him, if I'm in a session, I'll turn to him and I'll say, oh, you aren't interested? And he'll say, no, you don't understand. I'm dying to know. I got to know. And she'll say, see, he doesn't want to know. And we have it so ingrained in our minds that they're not interested, and it's just not true.
We'll have more of Elise's conversation with Nicole Daedone in a minute. When I sat down to write my new cookbook, The Clean Plate, the first rule was that everything had to taste really good. The second was that every recipe had to comply with the fundamentals of clean eating. I wanted the recipes to work on days when you're craving a healthy, filling lunch or planning a dinner for a friend with a food sensitivity. And because I love to cook and I love to eat, I wanted to have fun with it all. I never want food to feel like a punishment or a chore. This cookbook is different for me because in addition to the recipes, I included 6 Q&As with cutting-edge functional doctors and nutrition experts. Each one focuses on their area of expertise, from metabolism to heart health. And they all come with a tailored week-long cleanse. I hope you get a chance to try out some of the recipes in the Clean Plate. You can pre-order it now from your favorite bookseller, and it comes out on January 8th, which is right in time for my own annual reset.
In some of my previous jobs, I had to work across different teams and departments, but nothing totally prepared me for how cross-functionally we work at Goop. All of our different teams, from merch to brand partnerships to content to tech, have pretty different objectives and workflows. None of our teams can get by working in a silo, though. Just doesn't work. The train only seems to stay on the tracks when we're all talking to each other and able to quickly and effectively share ideas, tasks, timelines, and creative designs. And to stay in lockstep with each other, we need some help. Dropbox is one platform that we rely on a lot. Dropbox is an online home for your workplace and everything your teams are working on. It lets you organize conversations and workflows for a lot of different projects all at once in a way that feels seamless. Dropbox comes loaded with a set of tools that helps you cut out the everyday office distractions and logistics that always end up taking more time than you'd like. It's a way of minimizing the typical obstacles and keeping the office in flow so that people can do what they showed up to do, their best work. To get your team on Dropbox, check out dropbox.com/flow.
Okay, let's get back to our chat with Nicole Daedone.
When couples come to you, is it who typically is leading? Is it the woman who's reaching out or the man?
This is funny. It's the woman through the man.
Okay, break that down.
So he'll make the call and he'll do the due diligence, that everything, and then he'll say, "She found your book," or "She found you online," or something of that nature. She sends him in as the warrior in case we're all crazy.
Amazing. So what's the difference? Okay, going back to this 20 minutes, is the climax important or is that whatever?
It's so whatever. I just did a lecture and it was all these scientists, these guys, and they were just asking about the climax. And I said, a climax is a 1 for me on a scale of 1 to 10 at this point. The places that you can go, it's like when dynamite goes off on land, it's a big deal. But when it goes off deeply submerged in the ocean, it's nothing. It's enjoyable, but it's actually a blip in a really unbelievably deep state.
So interesting. I also think that for women too, there's so much pressure on that as like the climax that it becomes this weird focus or finish line or like a goal, which isn't great in our culture, which is already so goal oriented.
Right. And it hijacks the deeper thing. I like, to me, climax is like sugar. Like it hijacks your hunger for the real thing that you're looking for. And I think we're looking for this deeper state. And so we only have this one thing, so we just keep pressing the climax lever. We just keep pressing it. But there's this entirely different world. There's a great thing. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote a book called Flow, and he was looking at artists, and he wanted to know what was in that canvas. What was it that was so interesting that they were willing to forego everything we know pleasure to be? They were willing to not bathe. They were willing to, not have money because they loved that canvas. And that was my question. What is it that people are willing to, because sex, as we've known it, has been really risky. And we just assume, there's a human flaw. We haven't looked for what the thing that people keep going through the risk of affairs or watching porn, or what are they looking for behind that? And it's my deep-seated belief that we're looking for this orgasmic state. We're looking for this state of consciousness, because once you hit it, unbelievable things become possible. It's the difference. It's almost like wearing 3D glasses and you're looking at the world through love as opposed to fear. We all know that feeling after you have a great makeout, and you don't like the way your partner eats soup usually, and you're kind of look at them, but you've had a great makeout. It's like, oh, I love how they eat soup.
Says the person who's dating. I love that idea, that meditative state. So what are the other pernicious myths about sex and erotic energy? Like what else are you trying to debunk?
Maybe I would say number one, like I said, so much of our sexuality has been defined by men, so it's been defined by how it looks. And what's so interesting is to make sex look good, it doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. And so there's this, we focus on the heels and the toys and it's like we keep dressing it up until we can't feel it anymore. And that's why I called the book Slow Sex. I love this idea of undressing it. Mm-hmm. And then showcasing the way it actually feels. There's a way, there's nothing more beautiful than a woman, who's lit up with nothing. She's not pumping or grinding. She begins to radiate something that's entirely different, but we're so covered up and we're banging so hard that we don't get to see that woman. So I think that's the most important thing, is for feeling to take precedence over how things appear. I think the second would be, for women, I would say that your partner being tuned into you is actually possible. I talk to so many women who've given up on this idea that he could ever know how, or she could ever know how to handle my body better than I can. And I can say from years of experience, I remember the first time I was with somebody who had stroked for many, many years, and I had the thought, oh, I wish he would move to the left. And even before I wish he would move to the and he had already moved there, that there is this kind of connection available. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would want to give hope. I know that it's possible. And I see so many women give up on that and then give up on the opening of this power. And that would be the most important thing. I think we tend to fall on sexuality or spirituality. And there's a marriage in between, and that would be the erotic. And inside of that erotic world is an entirely, it's where you elevate things to art. So we take it and it goes from being, Barnum and Bailey, which is kind of what sex is, to Cirque du Soleil. And there's this way that it can be artful and beautiful in such a way that you become more beautiful in the process.
I love that. And I think, I feel like any practice feels overwhelming to people, right? It's what you were saying in your Tinder dating days of like, oh, I know I need to do yoga, but I don't, etc. Like, how do you, and 30 days feels attainable, but probably hard. Obviously, you want people to cement the practice, but is it a quantity thing or more of a quality thing? Is this like, do this once a week if that's all that you have time for? Or do you feel like you got to do it more?
It's funny. I've learned to be more open-minded. But I want people to have a chance to make it. In the same way, when I first started yoga, they said come every day. And that's 90 minutes. This is 20 minutes to totally shift your consciousness in such a way that you're more clear, you're more functioning, you're happier, you have more empathy, you like your kids more. So it's not like it's a really long, arduous practice. You're getting your clitoris stroked. Mm-hmm. It's, even if you aren't at the full master level, you feel better. You just feel better every time.
And I guess you just do that instead of meditation, right? So you can strike one thing off your list and add something else. So how do you, when you think about this conversation, obviously we've been primarily talking about women, how does it directly apply to men besides, I guess, the power that they're voicing of wanting to be able to do that for someone that they love, that like, please tell me what to do for you.
This is so good. Because I think this is another myth. I think there's a place that we look at the world that he's doing it for her. Once a man makes it, we all have a gap, right? So once I make it through the gap of meditation where the voices are louder rather than quieter, right? And I actually can find peace there. He's not doing it for himself. He's not doing it for her. He's doing it for himself. He's doing it for that brainwave shift that he feels in his own body. He's feeling it for developing attention in a totally different way. Think about it. Where do men learn how to feel? There's no place for a man to come to sense another human being. We've trained men out of feeling. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to feel anything. And so it's a way to begin to tune in and feel. It's also a way, which is really important, I think, for men, because as a woman, I was trained to exaggerate. I was trained like, oh, you kind of touch me a little bit and ooh, ah, right? And so I actually train you to do it incorrectly. And so it's a way, because the signifiers are so incontrovertible of what's happening in her body. It's visual. You can see it. You can feel it for yourself. You can feel the flutter of contractions. It's really, really clear. Then he doesn't have to rely on what she says or what she does. He can feel for himself what's happening in her body.
Interesting. True power and control.
Yeah. Well, true power.
Yeah.
By relinquishing a certain kind of control.
Interesting. Where do you coach women to begin if they're feeling like deeply conflict? Like if this whole conversation is making them sit in their car and sort of squirm, like how do you get people to a place of feeling like they can do this?
It depends on the person. Most often, I'll be honest, most often I go through some back and forth for a little while and then I say, you want to do it, right? Because just giving somebody the opportunity to admit that they want to, and to admit, my job, I think, for many years has been creating a context where it's acceptable to do what you know you should do. We all know we should take care of our erotic selves. We know it. There are movies like How Stella Got Her Groove Back. We know that when this is switched on, the whole of our lives turn on. Everything changes. It's just crossing that threshold. And the threshold, as we were talking about before, is shame. We feel ashamed that we have a body because it's been put in this masculine context. But we can take that back. I think women's path is definitely around being in our bodies.
I know, it's important. I feel like it feels complicated, but maybe it's that simple. It's just taking it back.
Yeah. I mean, I say I'm willing to play the role of permission for you, because it takes so much for us to give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves.
I know. And that's obviously like the whole self-care conversation is big now, but I think it's easy to understand how this extends to that.
I think that's what it boils down to, is just this notion, like, you're worth it.
Thanks so much for joining our conversation with Nicole Daedone today. For more from Nicole, head to goop.com/thepodcast and get her book, Slow Sex. You can also find her at The Land, a retreat space in Northern California. Check it out at the-land.us. Now it's Ask Me Anything time. What is something that you always travel with or bring on a plane? Oh, Charlotte, it's a long list. I bring a lot of water, and I bring a lot of lipospheric vitamin C, and I bring colloidal silver, which I spray around my seat, which is supposedly keeps germs away. I have no idea. And I bring little lavender wipes because I read, I think in the New York Observer, that an airplane tray is the dirtiest. It's dirtier than the bathroom. So as you'll see, a lot of these center around my germophobia. I also make sure I bring headphones so I can catch up on all my podcasts. Have a question? Drop us a line at Goop on Instagram or Facebook. That's it for this episode of the Goop Podcast. If you have a chance, please rate, review, and let us know what you think. To keep up with new episodes, just hit subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends. For more info, check out goop.com/thepodcast. See you soon.